Today's shir is Masechta Nazir Daf Zayin. We're going to begin from Daf Beis Chavava Mebeis, about 8 lines from the top. Let's just review what we're discussing over here. We're discussing over here. We know that when a person finishes Naziris, he has to bring 3 animals for karbonas. One is a male sheep for an oila, right over here, as you can see on your screen. He has to bring a female sheep for a carbon chatas over here. And then you have to bring a ram, which is an older type of sheep, for a carbon shlamim. So 3 animals have to be brought as karbonas. So what the Mishnah has been dealing with is what happens if a person set aside these animals and then he died. He finished his Naziris, set aside these animals as his karbonos, and then he died. What do you do with these animals? So the Gemara says that the one that he designated for an oila, you bring as a carbon oila. But here's a main point. The one that he designated as a chatas, since he's dead, he doesn't need a carbon chatas anymore. So therefore, we just we put it into a pen and let it die. But the one that was left over as an ola, and he didn't bring it because he died, I guess his family will take the animal and bring it as a carbon oila. And the one that was left over as a carbon shlamim, again, the family would bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, bring it as a carbon shlamim, and because it was designated as a shlamim, and it doesn't lose its kedusha shlamim, though the owner died. So the same would hold true is what happens, let's say in this case. A man finished his Naziris and he left over 3 piles of money. The first pile of money, he said, you know what? I'm going to use this pile of money for my carbon chatas. The second pile, he said, I'm going to use for a carbon oila. The third pile of money, he said he's going to use for a carbon shlamim. So he specified which part of the money he's going to use for which carbon. So therefore, if he died, so then the money that was designated to be as a carbon chatas, he throws it into Yam HaMelech. Again, once a person died, so then there's no chatas anymore. So because there's no chatas, he has to get rid of this money, and it's kedusha money, but nobody could benefit from that money. So you throw it into the salt sea. The money designated for a carbon oila, you bring it as a carbon oila. You buy a carbon animal and you bring it as a carbon oila, though he's dead. But his family will take the money and buy an oila, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the same thing, the money that was designated for a shlamim, they'll go ahead and buy a shlamim and bring it as a carbon shlamim and eat the meat in the kedushas shlamim around Yerushalayim. That's if he designated 3 different piles for money, one designated for chatas, one designated for oila, one designated for shlamim. Here's the trick. If he designated one pile, and he said, this is for my Naziris karbonis, but he didn't specify specifically it's for the chatas, and then he passed on. So then there's a halacha l'Moshe Messinai that despite that I know that there's a chatas mixed into this money. So technically, if there's a chatas mixed into the money, I would say that you should throw all the money into Yam HaMelech. But because he left it unspecified, halacha l'Moshe Messinai says that what? You donate it to the Beis Hamikdash, you throw it into the pushka, and they buy karbonos oila with this money. So that's something that's unspecified. You throw it into the and you leave it over as a carbon oila. That is the halacha l'Moshe Messinai. The question that Gemara is dealing with is what happens. He didn't leave over money. Let's say he left over an animal. Let's say he designated an animal. He got so excited and he decided he's going to designate an animal. And within this animal, you have 3 karbonos. He's going to eventually sell the animal and buy 3 karbonos for his Naziris. But this is what he left over. So do you view this as money, as unspecified, like the pile of money? Therefore, when he dies, you just sell the animal as best as you can, and you sell it, and you use the money for one oila. Or do you say, no, there's a chatas mixed into this animal. So if you're going to sell it, there's a chatas mixed in. You don't know which part of it is a chatas, so you should take the whole animal and kill it. I mean, basically starve it to death, but you don't bring it all as an oila. So was the halacha l'Moshe specific only money and nothing else, or it could be anything that he left over that's unspecified, we would bring as a carbon oila? That's what the Gemara is discussing. Alma Rav Huna, we're going to start from Chavav and the base, and it's going to be about like 8 lines from the top. Seven lines from the top. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Huna said in the name of Rav, Lo Shanu, the halacha Moshe Messina was only taught elamois, only if he left over currency. Then, if it's unspecified, then we bring it all as a carbon Alva behema, if he left over one animal, and let's say it's a holy animal that you could potentially bring up as a carbon, but it's not appropriate animal for a nazir. Let's say he left over a cow. Cow is a kosher animal; it's a par, but none of the carbonis of a nazir are pars. They're all sheeps. So therefore, if he left over an animal, we treat it as if there's a specified chatas within that cow. And therefore, if there's a specified part of that cow that's designated for a chatas, then when he dies, so you would take the whole animal, since you don't know which part of the animal is a chatas, you would take the whole animal and get rid of it. You throw it into Yam HaMelech or you starve it. Alma, Rav Nachman qualified. He said, that an animal, we treat it as if it's a specified, that he specified the chatas, and we get rid of the animal. Loishana was only taught ela tamima, only if he specified a complete animal. Aval balas mum, let's say it was he designated, the Nazir designated an animal that has a blemish to it. So basically, if he designated an animal that has a blemish, let's say he designated that cow with a broken foot. And he says, from this cow with the broken foot, I'm going to buy my carbonis. Well, it's only one step to turn that broken foot cow into money. He just has to sell it and transfer the kedusha that's on the cow onto the money. So then, harehi kistuma, we can treat it like money that's unspecified. And therefore, if he died, leaving that cow with the broken leg, since it could easily be turned into money, we treat it as money, and therefore you would buy a carbon oil with that money. But if you left over a bar of silver, let's say he left over this bar of silver. Again, he was a Nazir. Finished his Naziris, he said, I'm designating this bar of silver to buy my carbonis. Within the bar of silver, you're going to have a chatas in there. Anyway, he died. So do we treat it as unspecified money? So Rav Nachman said, no, we don't treat it as unspecified money. We treat it as if it's a specified chatas in there, and I guess you throw the whole bar of silver into Yam HaMelech. Because nascha, a bar of silver, is not easily turned into money. But Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Loma, afila naschar, even a bar of silver, since you could technically get the right market for it, and you could technically turn it into currency, ma'os. So it's part of the halacha l'Moshe Sinai that if he dies, you turn it, you would bring a carbon oil from that bar of silver. Alva savar shakayres. But let's say he left over construction material. Let's say wood for construction material. He was excited. He finished his Naziris. He said, I don't have money now, but I have construction material over here. I'm going to say this from this construction material, I'm going to buy my carbon oil. And I'm going to buy my carbonis Naziris. Since when he dies, if he dies, since we don't know what part of the construction material was for the chatas, for the oilo, and for the shlamim, we assume there's a chatas here, as if he's designated and specified there's a chatas here. And so if he dies, and since it's not easily turned into money, so then we would take this whole construction material and dump it into Yam HaMelech. So that's the halacha. So the question here is, do we say that when the halacha Moshe Messina says that money stumin we turn into oila, did it mean only money or anything that he designated for his carbon, for his karbanis naziris, as long as he didn't specify it, it has a din like moi stumin, which we would make it into a carbon oila. So one mandiyama of the Rabbanan say not, but some of these mandiyama said no, as long as you can turn it into money somehow, it would have a din. It would have a din like coins, like the pile of coins, and that when he dies, since he didn't specifically say, I have a chatas here, he didn't specifically say that, since that, then you would try to sell it and you'd bring one carbon oil with it. Amalei Rav Shimi bar Ashi Rav Papa. Rav Shimi bar Ashi said to Rav Papa, my tamai the Rabbanon, what is the reason that the Rabbanon hold, the Amrei, they say, Rabbanim were very strict. The Halach L'Moshe Sinai is very strange. The Halach L'Moshe Sinai says that if you have a currency, unspecified currency, I know that he said that my carbonis are coming from this pile of money, right, that he left over. Let's get the pile of money up there. He said, from this pile of money, I'm going to bring my carbonis Naziris. But since he died and unspecified the money, which part of this money, how many coins he's using for the chatas, oilo, and shlamim. So even though we know there's a chatas mixed in, since he didn't specify it, Allah says we donated to Beis HaMikdash for an oila, but only if he left over money, nothing else. That's what these Rabbanan hold. Ma'is, the Malach L'Moshe says money, v'loy behema, not an animal, v'loy nascha, not a bar silva, ma'is, money, v'loy savara, not construction material, only money. If he left over and then he died, then we bring a carbon oila from it. Elamata, so then by that kind of logic, you will say the same thing. Ma'is, if he left over money, then you buy one carbon oila. If he left over ma'is after he died, v'loy oifis, let's say, not birds. In other words, if he would have died and left over birds that remained unspecified, we should say that bird should not be brought as a carbon oila. I'm going to give you the case and example in a moment. Would you say so? The Rav Chizda said, "Ein hakinim misparshois." Kinim are not considered specified, and therefore, if it's specified and he dies, you can't bring it as an oila. He specified it. Only when he bought it, at the time he purchased it, or at the time that it's being brought into the Beis HaMikdash and the kain is doing the avodah with it. Now, what we're saying over here is that Rav Chizda said, let's say a person, here we got birds, let's say he's a mitzvah, okay, and he's supposed to bring 2 turtle doves, one for a chatas, one for an oila. And then he didn't specify. Well, let's say he bought one turtle dove. Okay, one turtle dove, and he didn't specify, I'm going to use it for a chatas, use it for an oila. Says Rav Chizda, if he dies and didn't specify it when he purchased it, then it remains unspecified. And therefore, if he died, and we'll take the bird and bring it as a carbon oila, even though it's possible that it could be a chatas there. Maybe it's a chatas, maybe it's an oila. But since he left it unspecified, Rabbi Chizda says that's part of the halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It seems to what Rabbi Chizda is saying. That's part of the halacha l'Moshe Sinai. That if something remains unspecified, you bring it as a carbon oila. But according to those rabbanan, if the halacha l'Moshe Sinai was specifically only if you left over coins, not if you left over birds, so then according to that, even though he left over a bird, we would not bring it as a carbon oila. And why did Rav Chizda say that you would bring it? If it's amai, if it's only by money and not by birds, halmoy is gemir law. Why money was the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, not by birds? So it must be that when the halacha l'Moshe Sinai said that money that was left over, you bring it as a carbon oila, it doesn't mean specifically money. Anything that remains unspecified, then he dies, we would bring it as an oila. It can mean not just money, but it means birds, it can mean a bar of silver, it can mean maybe even construction material if you can return it into money right away, or an animal that has a blemish to it, which can easily be turned into sell it on the market, on the animal market. So that's what the proof of Rav Shimi Bar Papa said to Rav Shimi Bar Ashi said to Rav Papa. So Rav Papa wanted to answer back. Amalei. So, or Rav Papa, we go to Chavzayim and Aleph. Amalei. So Rav Papa answered back. Now, according to your reasoning, what's your reasoning? Is that Halacha l'Moshe Sinai was not definitively only talking about coins, but anything that he leaves over unspecified, anything that you leave over unspecified is automatically unspecified until you say specifically it's specified. But other than that, it remains unspecified. And whether you left over coins, whether you left over birds, whether you left over silver, we always remain it unspecified. And the Halacha l'Moshe Sinai say that when he dies, we just bring it as an oilam. So if that's the case, if that's what you hold, Haditnan, let's take a Mishnah. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, a man said, Hevi shalish behemoths, a Nazir that completed his Naziris and put aside 3 behemoths. He took a male sheep, a female sheep, and what did he take? And a ram. So he took these animals. Okay, let's go back to the animals. He took these animals, but he didn't say which one is which. He just didn't say that male I'm bringing as an oila, the female is a chatas, this one is a shlam. He just brought these animals. Here's my karbanis animals. So you don't have to say that this is the chatas. You don't have to say this is the oila. You don't have to say this is the shlamim. We use a common sense. Whatever is going to be for the chatas, we bring it as a chatas. La'oila, whatever you think is going to be an oila, tikra of oila, you bring it as an oila. The shlamim, whatever you think is going to be the shlamim, which is the male ram, obviously it's tikra of shlamim. Even though you didn't designate it, we say it's as if is designated. Oh, so we see that you don't really have to designate it. We extend the designation for you. So if that's the case, amai. But according to you, you hold as long as you didn't specifically designate it, it's not considered designated. And if it's not considered designated, then how could you, an animal that's set aside, say, oh, I'm going to choose this animal for the chatas, but the owner didn't say that I'm using this for a chatas. He just put it out there. We're just doing by process of elimination that this must be the chatas, this must be the oila, this must be the shlamim. But as long as he didn't say so, we won't consider it specified. And therefore, if that's what you're saying, that if that's what you're saying, why do we bring it as chatas? Why do we bring it as oila? Why is it being shlamim? As long as you didn't say it, it's not considered specified. So answers the Gemara. So you hear what the Gemara is trying to go over here. The Gemara is trying to say is a proof in the opposite direction, that the default is considered as if it is specified. So we'll limit as something considered unspecified only if it's coins, but the halacha l'meishim sine. Other than that, we consider everything specified, and therefore it's all chatas and oila and shlamim mixed up into that item that that person left over, and we would not make it a carbon oila. Answers the Gemara, no. Well, in this scenario, Amalei, he says like this: Hasam by the birds, the Torah says, when do you specify birds? When a bird's considered specified, designated for a chatas, v'lakach, when you purchase it, or v'asa, when you actually bring it up to the mizbeach. As long as you didn't say so what it's for, the birds remain undesignated. And therefore, Omar Rahman, only when you purchase it, EBC as kain, when the kain makes it, when is makravid. Other than that, the Torah seems to imply that it's unspecified. If it's unspecified, then if a person dies, we would bring it up as an oila. We don't say if it's unspecified, oh, maybe it's a chatas. The halacha mashmisi says it's unspecified item, and we bring it up, and we would bring it up as an oila. But by the case of an animal, even if you didn't specify it, it's obvious that it's specified without you saying that it's specified. Why? Because hachiname, since it's obvious, mi matzis amret hadein dechatas tikra of oila. Can you say that the female sheep, which is chatas, which normally is brought as a chatas, should be used as an oila? You can't say that, because hachanekeve, it's a female sheep. Hachazachar, for an oila, it would have to be a male sheep. So even if you didn't specify it is considered specified in that case. And that's why you don't have to re-specify it. If you just brought these animals and say, here's my Naziris animals, we don't make you say, oh, this one's the chatas, this one's the oila, this one's shlamim. It's automatically understood that the female sheep is for the chatas, the male sheep is for the oila, and the ram is for the shlamim. So that makes it automatically specified. That's that case. But in any other case, everything is considered unspecified, whether it's a pile of coins, whether it's a bar of silver, whether it's a blemished animal, as long as you didn't say there's a chatas here, you just left it as is unspecified, we consider it unspecified. And therefore, if the owner would die and leave over these items as part of his kabbanis naziris, let's say he left over a bar of silver, and this was where we know he designated this bar of silver from where to take the money to buy his carbonas. If he died, we would sell the bar of silver and buy one carbon oil with it. So now, one last question. Masav Rav Hamnuna. Rav Nuna asked the question against Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman said that a blemished animal, a blemished cow, is considered like money. So if a man was a Nazir, left over a blemished cow, and he says, this cow should be holy, and now the cow has a blemish, it broke its leg, and then he died. We would take the blemished cow, sell it, and use the money as to buy one carbon oil. Okay, because it has a din of unspecified. Mi amrinim. So Rav Nuna says, do you always say behema balas mum kistuma damya, that a behema that has a blemish in it is considered to be an unspecified animal and unspecified item, and therefore you would bring a carbon oil with it if the owner passed on? Tashma, come in here. Ketzad, this is the Brisa says, Ketzad Omru, what's the case that we say, Ish Magaleach al Naziris Aviv, a man could become a Nazir, and instead of buying the carbonos, he could use the money that his father left him for his father's own Naziris. Let's take the case. Bisman Shaya Aviv Nazir. We're reading like the Bach says. His father was a Nazir. Let's say his father was a Nazir. Not he was a Nazir. His father was a Nazir. Man's dad was a Nazir. The Hifresh Aviv Ma'ois L'Naziris. And his father left over money for his Naziris. Separated like a pile of money. And this money, he's going to buy carbonos animals. Umeis, and then he died. Now, technically, you would take that pile of money and just give it to the Beis Hamikdash, throw it into the pushka where they buy carbonos oilus with this. But the son said, Hareini Nazir, I want to be a Nazir, Amanasha Galeach Amois Abba. On the condition that I don't have to spend money from my own pocket, I want to take this pile of money and use it to buy my own carbonos. So if a person said that, then it's good. Then we allow him to become a Nazir and use that money, his father's money, which was unspecified, and use it for your own carbonos to buy the shlamim, the chatas, and the oil. Fine. Now, what's in a regular case? Let's say his son didn't become a Nazir, and the father left over a pile of money. So here, if he left over a pile of unspecified money, that pile of money, again, let's get this, he left over, what are you going to do with it? Allah Sinai says, although we know he meant to buy a chatas with this money, part of the money, despite that, we'll donate it to the Beis Hamikdash and bring a carbon oil. Yiplul and Dava, you throw it into the Nedava pushka. Let's say he set aside animals, let's say a male sheep and a female sheep and a ram. So the female sheep, he meant to be used as a chatas. So then chatas, when he dies, Thomas, you gotta kill the chatas. You bring you put it to death because the owner is died. Oila, the male sheep that he set aside for his oila, tikra of oila, you bring it as oila. Ushlamim, the one that he's designated as a shlamim, yikravu shlamim, you should be makrav it as a shlamim. Fine, the ram you makrav as a shlamim. My love, don't you mean to say, not only did he leave over animals that were complete animals, but let's say afila balas mum, let's say he left over a balas mum animals. For example, he left over a male sheep that has a balmum, a male sheep that's a balmum, or a shlomim that's a balmum. Let's say he left over a ram that it's a balmum. You would also use it as an oila, use it as a shlomim. Or if he didn't specify which animal is for what, he just left over a bunch of animals that have a balmum to it, then you would consider all animals as chatas animals. And then you would have to, destroy all those three animals, kill all those three animals, because you don't know which one he meant for the chatas. But if according to Rav Nachman, you view animals that have a mum in it as something that could be transferred into one pile of money, so then in that case, then the Brisa should talk about a case where he left over a balas mum animals, and then we would still say yiplun and dava. So the first Gemara says, "My lava filamum balas mum," that even a balas mum it would be considered like mufareshes. So the Gemara says, "Loi tamima." Only if it's complete animals and it has no mum, then we consider it as specified. But aval balas mum. But if it was a balas mum animals with blemishes, kistum yadama, that has a din as unspecified, because obviously these animals cannot be brought as a carbon. So since they can be easily turned into, by selling them, it can be easily turned into a pile of money, they should have a din like unspecified animals that should fall to Nadava. So then if that's the case, my area mois, why does the first case of the brisa talking about mo'oi stumas, lema, let the first case of the brisa, the whole brisa should be talking about animals. So if you left over blemished animals, all these blemished animals, right? So then, since they can easily be turned into money, we'll view them as, just one big pile of money he left over. Yiplun and Dava. Why does the Brisa only talk about if he left over money? The Brisa could even be talking about that he left over blemished animals. And says the Gemara, Hachinami, that's true. But it really should be talking about blemished animals. But that's the same idea. Balasmul lamai kadisha. What value does a blemished animal have? The dame for its money. So dame, money, hainamois is money. It's one of the same thing. It doesn't mean only if you left over mois, tumis, yiplunadava, but even if you left over blemished animals, because it could be turned into a pile of money, it would have a din. It would have a din like mois, tumis, and therefore when he dies, they would all become oila. So again, the Gemara seems to be going with the opinion that it says that although the halacha l'moshe Sinai says that if a person left over a pile of money and then died and he unspecified that pile of money, we would take all that money and just bring a carbon oil with it. That applies to even if he left over items that could be easily turned into money, such as blemished animals. If he left over blemished animals as where he was going to take his finances to cover his carbonis naziris, and then he died before he sold those blemished animals, we will turn it into money and take all those blemished animals, although we know there's a chatas within those blemished animals that he wanted to purchase a chatas, but he never specified there's a chatas here. So it remains unspecified, and the halacha l'moshe Messina would apply to that as well, which we will turn around and just buy one carbon oila. We will continue with the rest of the Gemara Be'ez Hashem tomorrow.